Good evening, everyone. This is Kimberly Cleveland, the Good Thing Guru, coming to you live this evening. I'm super excited to be coming to you and giving you episode 4 of Becoming Life After Divorce. I'm super excited for our guest, Miss Deborah Johnson, who will be joining us here shortly. But I want to first introduce myself. If it is your first time joining us, I am Kimberly Cleveland, the Good Thing Guru. I am a relationship coach, a life coach, and I am here to help you during this season, during this live series, to just help you pick up the pieces after divorce. As a relationship coach, I know it is hard for us women who have gone through a divorce to get back up on our feet. And so this series is really about helping you step boldly into your future, to renew your confidence, right? To rediscover yourself, to rebuild, and to renew your joy, and to renew your purpose and your passion in life. And so, again, we have kicked off this series. We've had a couple of guests who have really blessed us, and I know this evening is not going to be any different. So, let me get into introducing you to our guests for this evening. Deborah Johnson is the founder of Visions Divine. She collides her passion with her purpose to transform clients from the inside out. Visions Divine seeks to provide the most rewarding experiences of accentuating the outer beauty of clients while unleashing the inner beauty that enhances their self esteem, confidence, and self worth with extraordinary makeup artistry services and premier lashes. Here are just a few of Deborah's many accomplishments. She was mentored by celebrity makeup artist Kim Lee. She was part of the Glam Squad for 2013 BET Honors. She was the product manager for Wink and Pout by Kim Lee from 2015 to 2018. She's the assistant makeup artist in the 2017 BET production Secrets, the movie. She was the lead makeup artist in 2020 Cinema 30 Media production for the movie The Exit Row. She is also an author and or co-author in The Faith for the Fiery Trials, volume number 6, presented by Dr. Nicole Mason. So help me welcome our guest speaker for this evening, Miss Deborah Johnson. Hello, sis. How are you?
Hello.
So
Thank
great
you,
to have you
Kimberly.
on this evening.
Thank you so much for having me on your series. I really appreciate the opportunity to share.
Absolutely. So, celebrity makeup artist, tell us a little bit about your marriage journey so that we can kind of just set the foundation for tonight as we endeavor to empower women who have gone through divorce. Tell us a little bit about your marriage history.
Okay, so I met my ex-husband in college. So it was around 1997 when we met. It was nice. And then in 1999, I moved to Iowa for grad school and stayed there for about a year and a half. Came back after that, and we reconnected again when I came back to the East Coast. And September of 2006, we got married. And then after that, September, no, actually 3 years later, we purchased our first home. Now, this is the thing. So we were in the process of purchasing a home. It was 3 bedroom, 2.5 bath townhome in Edgewater, Maryland. And we purchased on May the 8th of 2009. On May the 27th of 2009, which was probably about maybe 2 weeks later, we had our first child, our daughter, Brooke. And then after that, about 6 years after that, we had our son, Jaden. So I'm blessed to have two beautiful children. And the journey started from there after that. In 2019 is when everything just shifted. And I moved to Columbia. The kids and I moved to Columbia in 2019. And that's where the separation leading to divorce had happened.
Yeah. So it's fairly new still.
About 4 or 5 years, something
Okay.
like that.
Okay. So it's a little bit longer than what I
Yeah.
thought. So I'm going to kind of start backwards a little bit from what I've done in the past. I want to really talk about how you've stayed focused during these last 4 years on making sure that you reignite your passion and your purpose in the midst of going through your divorce. I know for me, that was one of the things that I was intentional about is not only reconnecting with God and on a deeper level, but also on a deeper level, connecting to what filled me and fueled me in terms of my purpose and my passion in order to get me through what I was going through. How has that been for you?
So I believe that it wasn't really difficult to navigate those to my purpose because of the fact that I believe that my purpose and passion are a part of me, a part of my makeup. So regardless of whether I was single, married, or at the time getting a divorce, I still had to walk in my purpose. So in order to do that, those were my things that like excited me, gave me joy. So makeup is my passion. So on those days that I didn't feel great about myself, I would just put my makeup on, look in the mirror. I would go out on a date. I would date myself. And those are the things that gave me joy. I also would journal a lot. Journaling helped me get through some of the most difficult seasons of my life. In addition to that, I also, as you mentioned in my bio, was able to collaborate with other authors and was able to share my story in Faith for Fiery Trials, Volume 4. And the subtitle is from the valley to victory with mountain moving faith. God has blessed me throughout this whole process. I've trusted God, I've prayed to God, and He's just kept me through all of this. And I believe that in doing that, that is what led me to keep going and keep staying focused and living in my purpose and my passion.
Awesome. A couple of things that you shared really resonated with me. You said that you really, again, your purpose and your passion, your purpose was something that brought you joy, right? And you stayed connected to that. And even on the days when your self esteem may have been low, you went to that thing that gave you purpose and passion, which is your makeup. Right? You are a makeup artist, a celebrity makeup artist. And so you would, no matter how you were feeling, right? That was your thing that really just brought you joy, right? That you could connect. And I think that's good advice. I think, that also worked for me, going out on dates and dating yourself really helps with women who may be struggling with their self esteem, right? Who may need to boost their confidence during the season as they're coming out of divorce and trying to step boldly into their future. And so I think that's great advice for you to just get dolled up, right? It doesn't have to be for somebody else. You can get.
What I would say though, I don't believe that it necessarily affected my esteem per se. I just think that those days where I wasn't feeling my best, because I don't think we even got to that point or whatever. But at the time when I was going through my divorce, I was taking care of my mother as well. In 2019, my mom was sick, so I had to deal with
Mm,
two things at the same time. So I don't think it was any self-esteem issue. It was more of the weight of carrying everything at the time, caring for my mother. And like I mentioned previously, we moved to Columbia, and it was a blessing in that as well. When we moved to Columbia, my mother was able to stay with me while she was going through treatment at John Hopkins.
mhm,
So regardless of, the fact of me going through the separation before the divorce was final, I still had other things that I was dealing with. So in all honesty, I believe that my focus was more on my mom at the time and not necessarily
mhm,
the process of the divorce.
mhm,
And I feel like during my mother's services is when everything really hit me as far as, Deb, you're really by yourself. I think
mm,
that's at that moment was when
right.
I knew that I was in the process of being separated on going to the divorce. And, so I just kind of ignored the divorce for the
Mhm.
moment because my concentration was fully on my mother.
Right, right. Thank you for that distinction. I know definitely for me, when I was going through my divorce, I was grappling with self-esteem issues. So I didn't mean to put that on you, but even the self-esteem or when you're feeling low, I agree with you. Like getting dolled up, going out, that can help with those, if you're feeling
Yes,
either one of those
absolutely.
things. Um, and definitely, typically when you're going through a divorce, it's a lot of life changes. You had a significant life change in helping your mother and her passing. And so at times, there could be a lot of transition as you're going through divorce. And so that was another great thing that you just brought up in terms of you feel like your world, everything in your world is transitioning, and then how do you deal with that? Sometimes you do have to just focus on one thing so that you don't get overwhelmed, right?
Right,
um
right.
and as you just and you are a woman of faith, like you said, you wrote, as one of the co-authors in the books Faith for the Fiery Trials, that your faith was a part of just getting you through all those peaks and valleys. Talk a little bit more about that.
So I also feel that I had a counselor, and nothing wrong with having a counselor. I believe that it's helpful. So that way you're able
Absolutely.
to navigate through those seasons in your life where you really don't know, which way you're going.
Mhm.
As far as my faith is concerned, like I had to trust God in everything, trust Him in all things, because like at the time, of course you have faith, but when you're going through trials, that's when you really got to lean on God. And that's what I did. A little bit about my background. My father's a bishop, so church is pretty much all I knew. Grew up in the church, and so it was very difficult to not, like I don't know how I would have been able to make it if I didn't have a relationship with God. I just don't. Um, so that was key for me, number one. Me and God are like this, like we tight. So I go to him about anything. Like, listen, I need some answers. I need something from you. I need a word or something because this is too much at the time. I thought it was just too much to bear. Going through this with my mom, going through this with my ex-husband and stuff. But God kept me, He kept me in my right state of mind. I didn't go like off, where some people would not have been able to deal with two traumatic instances at the same time, But I guess it was meant for me to go through that in order to build my faith even stronger. And writing the portion of my chapter in that book was very therapeutic for me as well.
Absolutely. I can attest to, as you mentioned, the journaling, the writing for the book, can be very therapeutic. In fact, it helps you to really examine what you're feeling. A lot of times, getting it down on paper gives you clarity. And it
Right.
reinforces, like you said, especially when you're standing on your faith, it really reinforces, um, just how good God is, right? At times, if like you said, if you didn't have your faith, you could really be looking at the wrong things. But when you really keep your hand in God's hand, He keeps you focused on the right things. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, that's beautiful. Let's talk a little bit about, was there any rediscovering of who you are in terms of, just taking a look in the mirror about, who you were prior to marriage, who you are now, and maybe not some huge, differences in terms of who you are, but maybe some subtle shifts, that you noticed, and about this journey of becoming who you are now. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I know I've changed a whole lot. I think that honestly, I think that's part of the process. because prior to the divorce, in all transparency, I was selfish. I
Mm,
was controlling. Like I needed to be in control of things. And so then during the divorce process, I wasn't in control at all. So I had to
mm,
surrender. And from that point, I just had to just trust God in all aspects. Like now I'm more conscious of like perspective on life,
mhm,
how you deal with things, how you respond to people, things of that nature. So I've noticed that I have grown a whole lot for the good. I was in another it was almost like a group with Dr. Nicole Mason. She's one of my mentors, and we had book discussions.
mm,
And those were very beneficial for me as well because it taught me more again about myself. So
yeah,
I know that I have grown. I'm quick, I'm slow to speak, which is it says it in the word, right? You have to be slow to speak. So I'm very attentive, and I try to also hear people out first before giving my opinion on something. Now, if you don't want my opinion, don't ask me.
right.
But other than that, I've grown a whole lot. I think I've become a little, and again, this has a lot to do with um, two losses at the same time, right? So I feel like I've become more empathetic to those who um, have lost anything. So
Mhm,
my story is a little bit different, and most people probably wouldn't even know it unless they had a conversation, unless they read the book, or unless they're watching this live.
mhm,
I'm not one to blurt my whole business out there like that, but I
right.
think sometimes it's beneficial for, especially those people that might be going through, as a
Mhm,
testament that they'll be okay, as long as they keep trusting in God and trust the process.
yeah. That is so good. You talked about, realizing that that you were controlling in your marriage, but once the divorce hit, you realized that you were no longer in control, and that whole just surrendering. I think a lot of women find that challenging, especially us Black women, right? But women in general struggle with control. And
Right.
I just think that it's beautiful, again, that you were open enough to say, hey, I recognized who I was. I no longer want to be that person anymore. And I realized I just need to surrender. Surrendering can be very, you use the word therapeutic, but also healing. Um, and so I just think that's a beautiful thing to be able to impart to others who may be going through the same thing. You talked a little bit too about two traumatic experiences going on at the same time, and I definitely want to get into your healing journey. Not only your healing journey from divorce, but like you said, while also going through the healing journey from your mother passing. I'm sure there was grief associated with each one of those. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Grief was associated with both at the same time. During that time, it was hard for me to sleep. Um,
Mhm,
I was trying to figure it out. Like I was tired, but I couldn't go to sleep, right? So I would do things like put lavender on the pillows just to go to sleep. I would take like sleep pills or whatever just to try to go to sleep. And at one point, I did like I eventually started doing meditations. So this is something that we used to do when my mom was still living with us or whatever. And I would put the kids in a room and my mom, and we all do meditations. And actually that worked. Like, so it helped us, like relax and get calm and end up going to sleep. So I had to introduce that again because, just trying to figure things out, you're just like all over the place. So then once I found out that the meditation really helped, then I implemented that again. Um, Now, currently, I'm healing, because healing, I believe, is a journey, right? So it's not like you're going to be healed within a day or so or whatever. I believe that it's a journey, an ongoing journey. And so now what I do, of course, I mentioned meditation. I also do sound baths. Um, and then I also journal. I think I mentioned that previously. One of the most amazing things that I've always done, I'm a positive person. So I often make sure that I'm connected with positivity, because that's just who I am as well. So I don't want to be around nothing negative. And interestingly, though, if the conversation is like kind of negative, I'll switch it up or I'll just walk away or whatever. So I don't really have time for that. And it's funny because, like, once you hit losses, like when you experience losses, after a while, when you're growing, you don't have time for certain things. Certain things you just don't tolerate anymore, and I found that was part of my growth as well. Um, but yeah, those are the things that I did. Of course, play and makeup, because I love doing that. And then I also started painting, like, so painting flowers. One of my sisters does a painting, so I would just, she showed me how to do that. She's like, it's totally different from makeup. And so I started doing that, and that's very therapeutic. Those days I'm like, hey, let me just paint something right quick, if I didn't want to do it in with the makeup, I'll do that. And I also, um another healing part of my journey, is I founded the Survivor Series campaign, and that's
Mhm.
in honor of my mother. And so with that, I'm able to bless a survivor. And basically, that's the whole concept. It's like a project give back kind of thing, giving
Mhm.
back to the community, giving back to those people who have survived anything. It doesn't necessarily have to be an illness, but again, it's in memory of my mother. And so I started that around the time that she passed, but then I had to heal first, before I
Mhm.
could even go out and do this campaign. So now I'm revamping that and restarting that over again. I will have my story out probably within the next couple of weeks, and then from there, I already have 4 survivors that have already done their makeovers and things of that nature, and then just go from there with the campaign.
I love that as a part of your story of boldly stepping into the future, using your pain for purpose, right? I love how you're doing that, and also honoring your mother with the Survivor Series. You said healing. I definitely agree with you. Healing is a process. It's not a day thing. It is an ongoing thing. Um, and just taking your experiences, and again, once again, tapping into those things that were already bringing you joy, right, and using the techniques that you found that work for you in your journey, in terms of the meditation, the journaling, the sound baths. I love all of those things that could be used for other people as tools to help them on their healing journey. But also that point of just using, finding a way, because God, the things that we go through, God has a purpose for all of those things. And I love how you're using that um, in your purpose as you go forward um, in the future. How has it been? And I like to if you're open to it, talk about how the divorce has affected your children, and how you have kind of what you have done to be able to move forward and go forward, and setting a healthy environment for your kids. Because a lot of times, I had a child when I went through a divorce. You have 2 children. Anything that you can impart to a woman who also has children and finds themselves going through a divorce, and may, again, need some encouragement along the way.
Okay, so yes, my children were affected. I believe that they still are affected.
Mhm.
Um, I remember when it was fresh, they still would go with their father on the weekends, and when they would come back with me, they would just start crying, and I'm like, Lord, did I make the right decision? That just tore me up to see them act that, like, and they didn't, and the thing was like, I couldn't relate to them because my
Mm,
parents were married for 44 years,
right.
so it's not like I could say I know how you feel because I didn't.
Mm,
So at that point I was like, how can I reach them? Like, and sometimes I felt like I overextended just because I tried to fill that void that they were missing, but I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that on my own. So
mhm,
at that point, I put both of them in counseling, hoping that that would like kind of help them, and it did. Like, Jaden was young, so I found a youth counselor. Um, at the time, he really liked going, and those days that I'm like, oh, I don't feel like taking, it's like, but I need to because you really like it. It was
mhm,
more for him. It seemed like a playtime, but the counselor did more play and interaction that way, whereas my
mhm,
daughter did like virtual counseling and things like that. So I think that they enjoyed it, and I just sat down and explained to them, hey, look, mommy's in counseling as well, so we're all doing this together. I just want you guys to be the best persons that you can be. And even now, in September, it was a big transition for us just this past September. Yeah, it'll be a year actually. My son ended up
mhm,
moving with his father, and that was
mhm,
a hard decision for me, but it was something that I feel like he really needed. He needed his dad, and one
mhm,
thing I do know as a male, there are certain things that I would never be able to teach my son. Never. So I think it was more helpful for him to have that experience of now living with his dad. Initially at first it was hard, like I said, but we've adjusted. And I think that also was helping him on his journey, on his healing journey too. My daughter's still with me. She's a junior now in high school, so I definitely will be actively involved in her. She's a cheerleader, and she's doing great things. So, along with that, just being present for her as well. So that's what I think has helped my children adjust to these changes that their parents made. Counseling and allowing them to just grow. And then we do have, like, whenever both of the kids are with me, we have like sit down conversations, um, especially around dinner time. Like, how was what did you do this weekend? How did you have full conversations just to make sure that they're good? And I think that's beneficial for kids because they want to see that their parents are still involved, even though their parents aren't together anymore. Um, Thankfully, we co-parent successfully.
mhm. That's a beautiful thing. And I like, because again, when we talk about mental health, spiritual health, um, we cannot stigmatize that, counseling, therapy. I am so glad that you mentioned that, because not only do we need help, that our kids need help, and that, it's
Right,
okay. Explain to them it's okay to talk to someone else, even if you can't talk to mommy or daddy. Like you said, we're all going through counseling. This is hard for all of us, so, it's okay. And like you said, making sure that they feel like they have a voice, to be able to
right,
have, like you said, at dinner time, to be able to have those conversations and communicating, um, and then being heard. And like you said, you can't necessarily say, I know what you're going through, because that's not your experience. Um,
right,
but I'm here. I'm here for you. I'm here to, provide them the best support that you can provide them. Um, and, like you said, always strive to do what's best for the child, not
right,
necessarily your selfish feelings.
right. Well, one other thing I'd like to add, though, it was
Absolutely.
cute at the time, and I think it was very therapeutic. So there was a lot going on. It was a lot of deaths in the family and things like that. So
Mm,
it just became overwhelming. I'll never forget one day we were driving down the road, and I was like, "Hey guys, this is just too much, Mom." And so this is the other thing too. I allowed my children to see me in a vulnerable state. Like,
mhm,
they've seen me cry. in front of
Mhm.
them, you know. So
Mhm.
at that point, I was like, this is just so overwhelming. Mommies just don't know what, you know. And I said, can you guys do me a favor? Because they felt the we were having so many deaths in the family and everything. So they
Mhm.
felt that too. I was like, and I really wanted to go out into an open field, but I couldn't find one, right? So I was like,
Mhm.
in the car, we're just going to do this on the count of three. Let's just scream. So that was just so therapeutic for all of us. And we just
Yeah.
like screamed at the car, and it was just, we screamed, we cried, we did all of the things, you know, but it just made us feel better because we just released all of that, you know. So,
Yes.
um, if nothing else, I'm like, well, hey, maybe that helped them too, you know. So we
Absolutely.
just, mhm.
I love that. Being able to be transparent and vulnerable with your kids is so important, especially
Right.
when you're going through, traumatic transition. Being able to, model that for them, that it's okay to be
Right.
vulnerable, and it's okay to be upset and be angry and like you said, let's just or
We screamed.
hurting. Let it out in the scream.
Right.
Like it's too much, and it's okay to feel
Mhm.
like it's too much.
I
And
think
I'm sure.
especially though, I think most importantly, I needed for my son to see that it was okay to
Mhm.
cry if he needed to, you know, because most
Yeah,
of the time boys don't think that it's, you know, it's right for them to cry and all that. And I don't want him to
hmm
ever feel like he can't express himself. If he's feeling
right.
sad or if he wants to cry, just cry, you know. So I think that kind of helped him. And that's where I am with my kids, you know.
Yeah,
So
love that. Love that. Let's talk a little bit about the rebuilding, right? The rebuilding of your life after the divorce. I know you are a strong woman of faith, but were there any times that there may have been doubt seeped in? And when it did, what did you do? Or fear, any of those emotions that sometimes we struggle with because we are human, right? We're all human. Um, what advice would you give with the woman who may be struggling in that
um,
area about rebuilding your life? Because I know for me, I struggled with it, right? There was this negative Nelly in my head that just said, well, who's going to want you, as a single woman with this man child after having going through two divorces? Or how are you going to do it alone now? It's just you. For me, I didn't have an active co-partner, so to speak. So, the conversation may have been different for you, but I know for me, there were sometimes those fears and doubts that tend to creep in. And for me, I literally had to shut that voice out. I had to, like you said, really go back to Kim, going back to those affirmations and reminding myself of who I was and who I was connected to. So I'm curious, for you, how was that for you?
so I would just say like not necessarily doubt. However, I had concerns, you know, like I'm like, nobody, this was something that just stuck with me. Nobody's gonna want to talk to me. I have two children. Who told you that, Deb? That was my thing. I don't know where I got that from, but I think it was because I was always like in a family unit, you know, and I really never thought, I mean, you don't get married to get divorced anyway. So of course I never thought that I was going to be divorced. However, after I got over that, I was like, okay, I had to get out of my own way and just be open. Trust God again in the process. And I would have to stop focusing on the what ifs, you know, because at this point, if I'm rebuilding, I can't live in the past. I have to go full force ahead, you know. So and just realize that only change comes through God. I can't change anybody. All I can do is change myself. And so at that point, that's when I was just focusing on myself. In order to rebuild my life, I have to focus on myself. Do things, and it's not selfish to be like to have self-care and things of that nature, because that's where you realize who you, the person that you are. You find out more things about yourself than you ever realized, you know. So
So
basically focusing on me And it's not selfish to be, to have self-care, things of that nature, just because me and God, I'll just share this. Me and God had a conversation regarding this, right? And I will never forget. He gave me a lot of instruction. One of
Mm,
the things he told me was focus on you.
mhm,
And, like sometimes the other things that he told me as part of the instruction, of course I didn't want to hear that, but I had to accept it, because he told
mhm,
me that. So I'm like, okay, God, and I think if you focus on yourself and you make the necessary changes, then that's when the rebuild occurs.
mhm. So good. And I always say, if you're in a position to serve others, you do have to carve out time to focus on self, because if you are not healthy mentally, emotionally, spiritually, you cannot serve the people God is calling you to serve. That's your
Right.
kids, that's at work, that's at church, in your ministry. So it is not selfish, as you've clearly said, to make sure you focus on self. Because
Yep.
again, you are the foundation for your kids. One. So that is so important that you take care of yourself. Otherwise, how are you going to take care of them as you begin this process of rebuilding your life and what this new life looks like? Like you said, you used to be in a family unit. You're still in a family unit, but our family unit may operate and move a little bit differently now, right? And
Right.
so
Right.
um, and sometimes you have to think about self just so that you can get the mental clarity about how to move forward, right? And
Mhm.
so I love that you said that. Yeah, great,
And
great, great.
one thing that children, and this is what I've learned, one thing with kids, if you have kids involved, because they've always seen their parents together and a
Mm,
separation occurs, ultimately they want their parents back together, even
mhm,
if the parents decide that that's not what's going to happen. So I remember a couple of times, even my son would be like, well, mommy, I think you should go back with daddy. Like you and daddy should be. I'm like, but son, we can, things have changed. And I really didn't want to go into details because he was too young at the time.
right.
His dad has since moved on and he got remarried.
Mhm,
So that also brings about, like, that's not ever going to happen, son.
right.
So I think at this point now they understand that, it's mommy and daddy aren't going to be together. However, you still have the love from both your mom and your dad,
Yes.
regardless.
Yes.
So I think that is more powerful than mommy and daddy ever trying to get back together. As
Yes.
long as they have the love from their parents, that's all
Yes.
that matters.
Yes, absolutely. Keeping them focused on that our foundation is love and that you're loved no matter what happens is so
Right.
good, Deb. I'm glad you shared that with anyone who may be listening. Um, this has just been a really good conversation, and I just want to say thank you for your yes, Deb. I thank you for your transparency and openness and being vulnerable to be able to share pieces of your story in hopes that it will help someone else who is experiencing or going through divorce and just looking at how they can rebuild, right? And pick up the pieces and still thrive and still be successful and still have a healthy, happy life. And so, again, I appreciate you sharing what you have shared this evening. How can people stay connected to you if they want to stay connected? And of course, if they want to have their face beat to the gods, how can they connect with you?
Absolutely. I'd love to share. So I'm on all social media platforms under Visions Divine. That's Visions, the letter D and the letter Vine. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, all of the things. So that's a great way to get in contact with me. I also have a website. It's visionsdivine.com. And there you can purchase the book, and that'll go in more details in that chapter about my story as well. So that's the way you can get in contact with me.
Awesome. Can they also, through your webpage, if they want to be a part of your project, the Survivor Series, Do you have a
Absolutely. There's
form?
a link in there. Yes, there's a link in there for the Survivor Series. So if anyone is interested in nominating somebody or even nominating themselves, I'm in the process of opening that back up, and just submit your information. The only thing is you have to be willing to share your story. You won't be able to get a full makeover and photo shoot if you're not willing to share your story. That's the only thing. But once the story is shared, then we'll be able to put it on my platform. You can put it on yours. We'll tag all that great stuff.
Awesome. It has been great, my sister. Thank you again. Again, appreciate you coming on this
Thank
evening and
you.
dropping the wisdom and helping people have the tools to be able to have life after divorce. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you.